Alright guys, so I'm not going to waste any time. I'm just going to tell you right off the gate that Jurassic World on 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray, it really looks great. But the reason it looks great, it's because it's a newer film. It was shot a few years ago. Was it 3.5, 4 years ago, 2015? So they're using much better cameras. The visual effects are much better, so the transfer is going to be much better because it's a newer film. But let me do some analysis here. Let me just show you what I'm talking about. You see this detail? This is due to a higher bit rate. Okay, in order for you to see this, in order for you to see all this detail, number one, you're going to need a higher bit rate. That's number one. Number two, you're going to need 8.3 million pixels to give you that detail. And number three, you need HDR. And now when you have a higher bit rate and a high resolution of 8.3 million pixels with high dynamic range that gives you a great contrast between white bright digital levels and deep dark digital levels with full wide color gamut spectrum of colors, 10-bit colors. This is a 10-bit format you're looking at. So the colors will be much higher than what you see on a Blu-ray. And the end results here is obviously a stunning, even on the 2K intermediate here, on the CGI shot, it still looks great. Okay? Now, this movie does have a grain, but that grain, it's something that filmmaker has intended for this movie. This is the intent from a filmmaker to have that grain on it, okay? Now let's go through some more scenes over here. I'm using my GoPro Hero 6 with my one hand because I want to kind of bring my camera closer to examine, to analyze this in native 4K. By the way, I'm the only one doing this. I don't think anybody else is doing it the way I'm doing it like this. And even on this shot, you can see that. You can see that detail popping out. And the reflection on this dinosaur skin. The visual effects are definitely one of the best that I have seen so far on Jurassic Park movies. And Jurassic World looks fantastic, you know. But there's a variety of reasons why it looks great. Because it's a newer film, as I mentioned before. The visual effects are more enhanced than, let's say, 1993. So therefore, the movie will look much, much better. And even here, you can see just how much that bit rate helps give you a more sharper detail pop. You know, and my camera is not doing justice. You seeing this on this video through this camera, it's a one thing, but you seeing this in person, it's a whole another thing. And it looks great. It really does. And the HDR definitely helps with a higher resolution and a higher bit rate. And even on this shot, just look at that HDR, that peak brightness that's popping, and then that it's reflecting the skin. It brings a more immersive experience, especially if you have a really good home theater surround sound like DTSX or Dolby Atmos. In this case, DTSX. The 4K Ultra HD disc will give you that best possible movie experience of this version of the film. I'm not saying that you're not going to have same experience with a Blu-ray. Yes, you will, but this is like on a new level. Like you see things that you didn't see before. The HDR gives you that detail of full white color gamut and the contrast ratio. And then DTSX, the higher decibel, higher frequency on the speakers and the crossover. I mean, it's just the bit rate is higher on both visuals and audio. That's why you buy a 4K Ultra HD movie. And of course, high dynamic range, which is obvious. My only complaint is I wish that Universal had adapted to a Dolby Vision. If they had added Dolby Vision, it would have been a nice welcome addition. But hey, HDR here, it's great. It's perfect. No complaints. And I think this scene right here, it's a great example of that HDR and 4K bitrate. You know, if you look at his fangs, and it's just the color of the fangs. Some of them are rotten. Some of them are, you know, brown, reddish, yellow, green. You look at the forest. You look at the tree. There's a depth of vision. You look at the dirt on that gyrosphere. There's just so much detail that you see. And this is due to a HDR and a higher bitrate. Maybe I need to pull my GoPro Hero 6 out of my tripod just to show you what I'm talking about. And this is exactly what I mean. Look at that reflection. Look at the dirt on that gyrosphere. Even though this is a CGI 2K intermediate, look at that tree and the HDR that represents the color gamut of that rainforest. It all just simply looks much, much better in 4K Ultra HD with HDR. And this is why you purchase these movies. And this is why you rebuy these movies, again, because you want to have the best possible version of this movie. And even here, look at that HDR. Look at that peak brightness and that contrast ratio, and look at that light that's peeking from the rainforest onto this mutant T-Rex, if you will. And just look how beautifully it looks. It brings a movie experience to a new level. Now, this movie does have a grain, and I did talk about the grain. That's something you're going to have to deal with. You have to deal with that grain. But with such a high bit rate and 8.3 million pixels and HDR, you're barely going to notice that grain, especially from 7 feet away when you're watching this movie, or 8 feet away, whatever, or 9 feet away. I don't know how big your TV is or your projector. Point being, you will not notice that grain that much. And it's not going to bother you that much. It is there, but that was the intent of a filmmaker, to have that certain look and style. Okay? Just like you will see that grain on The Matrix as well. And The Die Hard and The Predator. And even here, look at that shot. It just looks fantastic. That HDR, it just looks beautiful here. That bitrate, HDR, that white color gamut with higher peak brightness, with a really nice contrast ratio. This is what you're getting. And this is really like a great example. Look at this shot right here. It really represents that full white color gamut, that higher bit rate with 8.3 million pixels. Maybe I can bring my camera a bit closer before this video ends. Just look at that detail. This is why I tell you, you will not have to worry about that grain in the movie, because when you're sitting 7 feet away, 8 feet away, 9 feet away, that grain will not gonna bother you. I don't care what anybody says, the HDR and the bitrate in this movie looks fantastic. This is the best version of Jurassic World that you're gonna get, period. At the moment of this recording, May 24th, 2018. And even here, yes, you see that grain, but it's very sharp. It's very detailed, and I love this shot right here. They really did a great job here on this HDR and the visual effects of 2K Intermediate. So there you have it. Hopefully this video was informative. Hopefully this analysis that was recorded in 84K gives you some idea how beautiful this movie looks on 4K UHD Blu-ray disc. Don't forget tomorrow, 5 p.m., Detroit Become Human live stream. I'll see you there. Take care, and happy Memorial Day weekend.